Hello and welcome. This is Dr. K, and I had a request to talk about drawings today. And so what you can see here is a nice assortment of different drawings from my daughters. Drawings can consist of all kinds of different things. You might have pencil work or charcoal work or colored pencil work. I mean, you could even go into crayons and markers and all kinds of fun things you can do with drawings. Oh, hold on, wait a sec. You sure? Drawings? Not like this. Oh, engineering drawings. Oh, okay, my mistake. This isn't the drawings that we're going to talk about. So give me 1 second, I'll get shifted over, change over to the drawings that I'm supposed to be talking about. All right, so I'm set back up to do the proper drawings, and what we're really talking about here is either engineering drawings, engineering plates, mechanical drawings. They may be referred to as technical drawings, a part that we're going to get produced, and we need to be able to represent that on a 2D sheet of paper. And that's done with views, as you can see here, and as part of what we're going to talk about today is I'm not going to go into views, but what we're really going to do is just talk about dimensioning guidelines, all these different numbers and how we represent what's going on. And so our first example here really shows us all the dimensions, but what we're going to see is that we've got a few extra ones, and those extra ones are really, depending on which direction you want to look at, either this 1/2 inch or maybe this 3/4. Certainly this 1/2 inch, as we have extra information. So what really we want to deal with is we don't want to duplicate the same information in 2 ways. And so what you can see here is we have the total distance stacked up here and the total distance here as the 2. So we're really going to not want to have that. Here we have the same information twice. We have 1 inch, we have 2 1/2 inches. So we're really going to want to get rid of one of those. So what we're really looking at is a correct way to not have duplicate information. So in this particular example here, we have dimensioned the part, but really the dimensions should be attached to the view that best represents the contours of the feature that we're dealing with. And so in this particular case, we can see this 3/4 here. It's very challenging to know what is the contour that this 3/4 is associated with. It'd be much, much better if this was shifted into the front view. The same sort of thing happens here. This 1/2 inch is very challenging. We have a hidden line. Really should be moved over there. And so with that, you can see by moving those dimensions here, it does a really good job at showing us what the dimension, what features the dimensions are attached to. All right, here's an example here. This is just a simple one. We have a lot of our dimensions here. It all looks pretty good. But one thing you'll notice is that we're dimensioning to a hidden line over here. Now, of course, that kind of violates our last guideline on dimensioning where the contour is. But it also, the next guideline that I want to talk about is trying to avoid dimensioning to hidden lines. We really want to try to avoid that as much as possible. If we're going to dimension to a hidden line, you may want to consider using a section view or some other way of showing that. Same sort of example, but you can see here, all the dimensions are put on top of the part. And so as our next guideline, we'd really like to try to avoid placing dimensions on top of our part. All it does is makes for confusion. It just muddies up the part itself, and we really have a challenge in knowing what's going on. Example here, you can see we're running extension lines to multiple views, and that's just a recipe for not being able to understand what's going on in the drawing. So we really, again, we don't want to be doing this. We don't want these extension lines to be attached to different views. We don't want that. So again, we're gonna shift that around. We're gonna move everything over to our front view. All right, in this example here, just as a general guideline, you can see most all of the dimensions are on this part, but what we really like to do is we prefer to find ourselves dimensioning in between the views if possible. So we're really trying to put dimensions here, dimensions in here, if we can. Now that may not always be the case, and we'll see this in this example as we move to the side that's more correct, is that we've shifted all of our dimensions into the in between the drawings. We have it here, but we do make an exception for this 3/4 of an inch. All right, here's a change up on an example. This one is when we want to try to, as best as possible, avoid having these extension lines cross one another. For a part like this, this may be challenging to do, but the reason is that we might get confused and we might think that this corner is actually part of the part, not recognizing that there are spaces in the extension lines here, and so we might get confused at what exactly is going on. In this particular view, being that we don't have any other view, we might think that there's some other feature setting here and not that this is just an empty space. Here's just a general idea, is that when we have a circle, we're going to dimension our circle with the diameters, and if we have fillets, we're going to use radius. And so in this particular example, again, it's just to make sure that when we have this circle, don't be using radius. Sometimes that can happen based on the software package that you're using. We want to make sure we get that changed over to diameter when dealing with circles. Fillets, okay, radius. We have our hole, our radius. We've got our hole dimension over here, and what we can see is it gets to be a little confusing in what's going on. What is happening over here? So what we really want to do is our hole diameter and even location really should be dimensioned by the on the view that again shows the contour, shows the circle, and so we're going to move those over. In this particular example here, you can see what we're having problems with in red on this particular case, and of course what we have is we have dimensions, we have dimension lines that are crossing dimension lines, and lead lines that are crossing dimension lines and lead lines. And what we really want to do is try to avoid this as much as possible. And so again, what we're going to shift these around, essentially make them look a lot prettier, get these things moved around. What could that look like? You know, here we go here. We're gonna separate those out, move the leader line, get them into a place where things look good. A little different one. We have this shaft of concentric circles, dimensions, and what you'll see here in red is that although it seems like it would be a good idea to line all these dimensions up, in general, when we have sequential dimensions like this and we're dealing with a shaft and diameter, really don't want that to happen. And so what we're going to really want to what we really want is to have these staggered so we can kind of see what's going on. When we are dealing with the shaft, in this case, although a very short and stubby shaft, we want to, again, dimension, in this particular case, our diameters on the view that shows us those diameters the best. And in this case, these, you can notice, it gets to be a little confusing on which one is where. Now these are nice and very equally spaced, and so you could argue on a drawing like this, we don't have too many trouble seeing which diameter those are. But believe me, when you get multiple circles into a hole, it starts to become very challenging to see what's going on. And so when dealing with shafts, now this is not dealing with holes. Holes are different. If these were holes, this is where we would want the dimensions. But since we're dealing with the shaft, what we really are looking for is, again, that idea that we're going to move the dimensions off of here. So there's my guidelines that I've compiled for drawing sheet dimensions. Hopefully you found this helpful, and you'll be able to use this to make your drawings just a little bit better. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.